A lot of people ask me, how did I heal so fast? Y'all, I was a healed whole person before I went into the relationship. That didn't affect how I viewed myself. What is the point of being mad at God? Like, God saved me for something that I don't even know what my future would have been like if I married that man. So moving on to the next stage. So the job. Y'all, while I was processing the hardest breakup I've ever had in my life, I also was driving over an hour each way to the most toxic job that I've ever had. When I first got the job, like most of us, I thought it was my dream job. It was great pay. It was something new, something different. I worked in sales in the freight industry, and I thought, it's a little different than what I'm used to, but like, hey, at least I can make a lot of money. Like, hey, at least I have this, I have that. But y'all, the money is not always worth it. After being there for almost a year, it had become very toxic. Not to get into the details, but if you worked in sales, you know how up and down it can be. Like, if your numbers are really good, then things are really good. If your numbers are bad, then it's really, really bad. And just imagine working in sales where a lot of your pay is based on commission. If I am going through a breakup and I don't want to be there every day, of course my numbers are going to drop. So that's what happened, and it just got really, really bad. Plus Atlanta traffic, driving there an hour each way, over 2 hours of driving every single day. It just weighed on me. So I was processing my breakup. I was driving to this toxic job every single day. And I was finishing up my last 2 classes of grad school. So yeah, it was a really hard time. To this day, if it wasn't for God, I would not have made it. It was horrible. Like, I would come home, cry myself to sleep every single night. During my lunch breaks, I would just bawl my eyes out, just cry. I would try to hold my tears in. I have so many messages to my friends, like, I don't think I can make it today. Like, I had to literally, I was on the phone with a client, had to hang up, run to the bathroom because I just couldn't hold it in. Like, I was so sad. Like, it was too much to process all at one time. And then, having the most stressful classes of my MBA program all at the same time, look, it was a lot. It was a lot. So yeah, so I was, right before we had broken up, I decided that I wanted to try to get a remote job. So, and one of the main, inspirations on doing that, was that we were planning to get married and I was going to move to his state, and I needed a remote job so that I could, kind of have the flexibility of working from home. So I had started to look for a job already. I was literally applying to over 100 jobs a day. If you go to, a lot of people ask me about the job too. How did I find the job? Go to LinkedIn, create a LinkedIn profile, go to LinkedIn, click easy apply, and click remote work. And it'll bring you a ton of jobs. So I was just doing that, and easy apply is great because you just push apply. I was applying to over 100 jobs a day. And it took about 2 months for the whole process. So right after the breakup was when I was in the thick of it. It's when most of the jobs started to call me back, was when I was processing the breakup. So just imagine, I'm working all day at this toxic job. I don't want to be there. I'm holding back my tears. And then I don't even get a break, because when I go on my lunch break, every single day I had an interview lined up every single day during my lunch break. So I was bawling my eyes out, trying to get the redness out of my eyes, wipe my eyes. Then I have to hop in my car or a conference room and get on video call, because all of the interviews are on video call. None of them were phone call. So they all were looking at me, and I'm just hoping and praying that I don't sound like I just got done crying and I don't look like I just got done bawling my eyes out. So needless to say, I got through it. I got through the whole interview process. There was dozens of interviews, bawling my eyes out right before, and then having to put on a smiling face and try to get this interview. And then at the same time, of course, getting all these rejection emails of people who didn't want to hire me. So, dealing with all that rejection, plus the rejection from the breakup, plus the toxic work environment and the stress from grad school, it was a lot, and I almost broke down. I remember one day, actually, I was at the place that I was staying at. At the time, I was renting a room from a friend who owned a townhome. So I lived in this really tiny room, And I didn't even have enough space for a dresser, really. I just had like one of these, I stacked those Walmart dressers on top of each other, and that's where I kept my clothes. It was just a really small room, but I was so grateful to her because she let me stay there a few extra months after the breakup because I had nowhere else to go. So I'm really grateful for that place. But I remember one time she wasn't home. I was home alone. And after the breakup, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't drinking water. I went downstairs to like, finally, I guess I'll finally get something to eat, like some water. Y'all, I was so weak from crying and not eating that I literally passed out. Like I blacked out for like a few seconds and I thought I was gonna die. Like, and I think it was a panic attack, to be honest, but it was just, I was going through so much. It was just way too much stress all at one time. And it was nothing but God that got me through. And I'm just so grateful for my support system too. But anyway, going back towards the job. So finally, I got in the last stages of a few different jobs. But as I was going through the stages of those jobs, they seemed great, but it was just something just a little bit off about them. So I was like, you know what, I'm kind of desperate. Like if they offer me the job, I will take it and I'll just keep looking for other jobs, but it's not really what I want, you know? But then this guy messaged me on LinkedIn. He was like, he was nice about it, but he basically was like, you know, you're not technically qualified for this job, but I see that we actually have mutual friends on LinkedIn and blah, blah, blah. And he actually knew my old boss, where I worked at a nonprofit in Atlanta. And he was like, oh yeah, I know such and such. And we had a lot of mutual friends. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And he's like, I'm actually a recruiter for a marketing agency. And I was like, oh, wow. He was like, yeah, you applied to us like about a month ago. Yeah, so we're hiring again. I wanted to see if I could set up an interview. And I was like, oh, that's great. So when I applied to that job, I had no idea it was what it was. It turns out, y'all, that job is literally everything that I was looking for. I wanted a fully remote job. It wasn't listed as fully remote. Since the breakup happened, I said, okay, I don't technically need a fully remote job. I can start working, you know, in Georgia. Again, I don't have to actually look for fully remote because a lot of the remote jobs were not calling me back. So, I actually started to apply to jobs in Georgia, and I applied to this job and it was listed as, you know, just a regular 9-to-5 job in Georgia. So when he messaged me and he's like, yeah, it's fully remote. It's a marketing agency. We work for this client. We plan events for brand ambassadors. I was like, oh, I used to be a brand ambassador. Like it's literally everything that I was looking for plus more. And not only that, but because of my toxic work environment, I wanted a smaller company that kind of felt more like family. And that's exactly what he said. Those were the words that he used. And I was just like, wow, this is so amazing. But because I had been going through so much at that time, like I almost blocked my blessing. I was like thinking so negatively, like, okay, I'll go on these interviews, but I don't think they're going to select me. Like I'm probably not qualified enough. I don't have enough experience. Like I don't have full-time marketing experience. So I don't think they're going to hire me, blah, blah, blah. But y'all don't limit God. I'm trying to tell, I'm in the, I guess, late stages of this position, right? The interview process. And I meet my now supervisor and she's like super sweet. But I remember that particular day where she interviewed me, which is like the second or third step in the interview process. It was one of the really bad days, a part of my breakup. And I was just super, super sad that day. So I remember thinking like this interview is probably not going that great. Like, she could probably tell that I was just crying and like, I don't know. I feel like I wasn't on my game like usual. So honestly, I just kind of thought that I probably didn't get it. Oh, well, I'll just keep looking. Long story short, they called me on for the next round of interviews. I kind of crushed that. And thank God they offered me the position. So they offered me the position, I believe in August, and they said they offered me the position in late July. And they told me I could start in August. So the breakup happened in early June. We were only engaged for a couple weeks. So the breakup happened in early June. And, by late July, I had a new job. I had started to finally, by the time they sent the offer letter, I finally started to feel healed and, you know, I was just feeling a lot better. Like I could get through the days now. I'm not so depressed. And I just started to look on the bright side of things. I started to take those hour-long drives as opportunities to just worship and pray and started to really get closer to God and lean on Him because I started to realize that it's okay to be sad and to grieve that relationship, but I needed to move on with my life because I asked God for an answer and he gave it to me. So I'm really grateful that I didn't stay in that depressed mode. I was really able to see the perspective that, like, what is the point of being mad at God? Like, God saved me for something that I don't even know what my future would have been like if I married that man. It's like someone is willing to do something like that before you're even married, like even a few months in. It's like, God knows what my future would have looked like. That was not the man that God wanted me to marry. So I really believe that, I know that me personally, I used to be so quick to blame God and be mad at God, but it's like I literally asked God for an answer and he gave it to me. So what is there to be mad about? So that's the way that I saw it. And I know for a lot of people, honestly, I get a lot of DMs with people that are completely hopeless and say that they don't want to live anymore because their boyfriend cheated on them, their fiance or their husband cheated on them, and they don't feel like, they're worth anything. But, one thing I would say is your calling most likely is not connected to that relationship. Like, God has so much more for you, and you have so many more people to impact that have nothing to do with that relationship. Like, the relationship should not define who you are as a person. And a lot of people ask me, how did I heal so fast? Y'all, I was a healed whole person before I went into the relationship. I didn't depend on him for my happiness. I didn't depend on him for my self-worth or my identity. Like, my identity was not being his girlfriend. My identity was not being a fiance. Like, I knew that I had a greater purpose and a calling other than that situation. So that didn't affect how I viewed myself, because I knew that, like, I have a purpose. I have great things in store for me, no matter what happens in that area. So, the job, it turned out to be everything that I prayed for and more. This was the first time I actually negotiated my salary, and they gave me more than they initially offered. So that's definitely something I would advise to everyone. Also, I didn't even know that traveling was something that I was passionate about. It's something that came with the job, and they told me that I could travel as little or as much as I wanted, which is like, who does that? Like, it's literally a remote job already, and I get to travel on top of that. And just without saying the company name, I plan marketing events for automotive brands. So major automotive brands that we all know. So we do a lot of college football games or concerts, and we basically put cars in places that they're not supposed to go. That's what my boss said. So it's just fun marketing events where people can, check out the cars and check out the different features of the newer cars. So I get to drive brand new cars right from the manufacturer. Like, it's just a really, really cool job. And I'm really grateful that even though technically I probably am not qualified enough for this job, everything from my past has lined up for me to have this particular job at this particular time. And I just see it as one more way of God just shining his light on me that, like, I made the right decision, and, God will reward your obedience. I asked God to show me, he showed me, and I was obedient in leaving as soon as possible. So I didn't, question it. I didn't try to argue with it or negotiate. I just knew that, I'm strong on what God is telling me about my future. And yeah, so I was obedient in leaving that relationship. And I feel like God wanted to bless me. He saw that I was suffering. I was depressed. I was, so sad and stressed out, and he didn't want that. So I constantly just called on God, like, please, I can't do this anymore. I need you to help me. And that's when he sent this job. So I'm so, so grateful about that. So on to the next one, the apartment. Last step, I was already accepted into the program, but the last step is for them to find you an apartment community and to interview with that community. So yeah, that didn't go as planned.